Now, let me introduce to you our speaker for today, and I am fired up for this. Dr. Steve Wilke is with us, and I got connected to Steve through a couple contacts in Houston. Steve is in Southern California. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But Trey Vick was the contact that connected me to Steve. Trey and Gary Thomas, a lot of y'all know Gary Thomas. So they're friends with Steve and recommended him to us. It's been fun getting to know him over the last month or so that he and I have been communicating back and forth. Dr. Steve Wilke is the principal and the co-founder of Lead On Incorporated, which is really a consulting firm that's focused on increasing productivity and profitability through sort of principle-based relational dynamics. And he'll be talking about some of those in our time here together today. Steve is the author of 6 books, including The Leading Edge and Corporate Family Matters. He'll talk about that more in a moment as well. He's got decades of coaching and consulting experience in a variety of leadership, spiritual development, and relational matters. He and his wife, Rebecca, have 2 sons and 2 daughter-in-laws and 4 grandchildren. So I know you do it in your heart, even though we can't applaud in person. But would you just join me now in welcoming Dr. Steve Wilke to the Toolbox platform here today? Steve.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here today. And I got to say something about the Toolbox Ministry's name. My entire career, I've tried to differentiate training. I don't like that word. I train my dogs. Training from equipping. And today, we've only got a few minutes, but I'm going to try to give you a ton of information. Thankfully, this is being recorded. So if there's something that resonates, you can go back to it. I'll note where we have probably 4 or 5 PDF sheets we can make available to you. And that'll give you a chance to go back. But the toolbox or tool belt is where you put a tool. Now you may use it every day or you may use it once a quarter, but boy, when you need that tool, we know that it's helpful. So we're in the business of equipping people so they don't need you anymore. They can be personally responsible before God. You mentioned faith, and to our fellow man. So I'm glad to be here. I'm clock watching because I know we've got to go to the top of the hour. And I think at the top of the hour, we'll have time for a little Q&A if there's something you'd like to talk about. But again, I'm looking forward to this. Boy, 2020, we've heard it over and over. We just, none of us read any books. None of us were prepared. And we've really had to adapt. And so we find ourselves kind of finishing one year and we're rolling into 2021. Some of you have done your strategic business plans for 2021, and or you're going to do them, or you need to do them, and or your business plans. And so I want to talk about some concepts. I want to encourage you. None of us go home every night and go, I wish the people around me would encourage me less. We don't tell our wives or our kids, I just wish you'd stop being grateful because it's just too much. I get it. None of us do that. So I want to encourage you, and I want to do that by inspiring you to maybe motivate yourself to those you serve and lead in some different ways as you move forward. And of course, all good leadership starts with ourselves, as far as we're concerned, and then moves to the workplace, whatever your vocation is. And so we're going to talk about that today. I'd like to have each one of my points be a benchmark. And there's lots of benchmarks. There's lots of noise about leadership. I want to stay away from that. I just want to talk about some empirically based truth principles that we can measure ourselves against. It's easy for me to speak and write. It's another thing to live according to the principles. I tried just to let you know, even though we work in the general market, we're faith-based. So all of our principles can be tried against scripture, which in our minds is the ultimate authority. Just to answer one of those questions with the upcoming seminars you're going to have. So Socrates, one of the 3 Greek fathers, to set this up, said something very profound a couple of millennia ago. And he said that you don't know a line's crooked until you put a straight line next to it. So boy, are we in our personal and professional lives in need of some straight lines, yes? In fact, there's probably an infinite number of straight lines. And so I think it's good to take a few minutes to look at those as we try to move forward. So first concept of probably 3 or 4 I want to share with you. There's this concept that we came up with years ago called the corporate family. Now, it's one of those terms where you go, really, that's like your deal, that's your contribution. But nobody had really trademarked it. Nobody done any research on it. Nobody. So we kind of went through the paces. And I want to put corporate family in context. And then I wanted to share with you the three pillars, the three things that make that foundation solid. Those are the benchmarks I want you to just think about how you lead. It could be your marriage, it could be your parent, you could be parenting, you could be grandparents, you could be the CEO, you could be a district manager, you could be a salesperson. It doesn't matter. You influence people. And as John Maxwell said, leadership is influence. So we just want to measure ourselves in the next 15 or 20 minutes that we have against some of these principles. And again, the recording is good because I'm going to move fast, and some PDFs we can make available will also give you some opportunity to review. So just think about these principles, and then we can study them later. We got plenty of resources. Corporate family. We all grew up in a family. We refer to that clinically as your family of origin. So some of us were adopted. Some of us were in foster care. Some came from traditional families. Some came from single parent families. There's many flavors and varieties, but with that comes a story. With that comes blessings and burdens. And when you go to the workplace, we all know as leaders, you bring that. So the more you have that under control, managed, the more work you've done, the better you're going to perform at work. So we'll just assume that's true. The second family that you're constantly connecting with is family of procreation. So you leave your family of origin at some point, and more than 95% of us get married, start a family of our own, and we intend to do it all differently. And as we all know, we don't get far from the apple tree, so to speak. We repeat a lot of things we wish we wouldn't. We're like, oh man, my dad said that. I said I never would say that. So the family of origin and the family of procreation, we read books, we make visits to the clergy, we see professional counselors, we take meds, and sometimes we really don't make much progress. So what happens is we bring that to our corporate family, our vocational family, and our performance is not peak performance. We're just not up to standard. So no matter how successful you are or not, you could do a lot better if you had your families in your head, your thinker, and in your heart, your feeler in order. But we want to talk about the corporate family because that's our focus today. So corporate family represents the people you lead. And most of us have had horrible corporate families, situations where we had the best leadership lessons learned. And then some of us have made corporate families that are amazing. And we all live somewhere between those on that segment, on that continuum of the corporate family. So there's three pillars, moving quickly. There's a PDF that we can provide you. There's three pillars. The first that we're going to talk about is emotional quotient or emotional intelligence or EQ. Now, many of you have heard of that. It's not new, and that's good because we just didn't make it up. It's empirically based. For 30 plus years, Daniel Goleman gets the credit, and he should. There's a lot of academics that have participated, but we have broke down emotional intelligence into a 2-5-25 model. That's a day trip. Do not have time to get into that today. But what I want to bring to you is EQ is basically a set of personal skills and 2 social skills. Some of us are better at one than the other, but we need to be proficient in both to be a peak performer. Now, many of you would say, Steve, this is like running a race here because I want to get through all this material. So forgive me. This is like running a race as you lead. So here's what you remember about EQ. EQ is 85 to 90% of the difference between an average performer and a peak performer. Once again, I'm not just saying this. This is in the research. If you do the studies for 3 decades, we've been told that 85 to 90% of the difference between an average, whatever your vocation, and a peak performer is in the area of EQ. So it's not conflict, it's not communication, it's not execution, it's not problem solving. The number one area where you get the biggest hit is in the area of EQ. So relative to 2021 business and strategic plans, you got to have a line item that focuses on emotional quotient because it's 85 to 90% of the difference between an average and peak performer. And we want to be an individual, a team, and an organization that is at peak performance. So that's EQ. We have a tool online. I'll refer to leadonuniversity.com, not as an advertisement, but I want to give you free stuff. So we have a metric that when you're a subscriber, we're the only tool that measures individuals teams of 2 to 2,000, and then organizations, or we call them corporate families. And it really starts a conversation about what's going on and how can we improve our EQ so we can be peak performers. It also gives it's scientifically based, it's a self-report, but we've run it through the rigors of reliability and validity. And so it's just a great tool. But the first of 3 pillars that make up the healthy, peak performing corporate families is EQ. Number 2, corporate culture. Now, culture is one of those words that we could put a bunch of academics in a room, throw them food for a year, and when they came out, they'd have worse definitions, and of the 12, they'd have 15 definitions, and it would confuse us all. So let me kind of just net it out. When we talk about culture, the culture at your home, the culture at your church, the culture today in your corporate family, we're talking about 3 things: your values, your beliefs, and your behavior patterns, your actions. So let's talk just for a second, minute and a half. Values. First Amendment, a value. I'm not negotiating it. Fourth Amendment, I'm not negotiating that either. All right. Second Amendment, First Amendment, Fourth, we all know those. So those are values, because most of us probably would throw down. We'll just use that term, whatever it means to you. But we're going to protect those. Those are not negotiable. That's a value. It's a line in the sand. 2, beliefs. My beliefs are what I believe about myself or my corporate family or a CEO or a founder, or it's what I believe to be true. So those change day to day, week to week, quarter to quarter. So values, beliefs, and then actions or behavior patterns. So if you want to know what somebody's culture is, do you look at the wall art in the conference room? No. This is kind of fun. I have to throw this in. I can't tell you how many times I've sat on the 80th floor in Manhattan with the C-suite and said, don't look, what's your mission statement? What's your vision statement? What's your 6 core values? They don't know any of them. So if they don't know, it's not filtering down, and their clients don't know, and it's just wall art. Nobody's paying attention. It's being a doer rather than being a listener. So if you want to know who gets to date your daughter, if you want to know who's going to date your son, and by the way, I have 4 grandchildren now, so that's a pretty important decision. I'm going to listen, but I'm going to watch number 3, actions and behaviors. I'm going to watch, I'm going to check it out, because that's going to tell me who that dude or dudette, male or female, man or woman, who they are and what they're really about. That's culture. Now I want to read to you 7, we got some great stats here. They come from our course online, but I'm going to have to, just because of time, move through those. I just want to list the 7 non-negotiable parts to corporate culture. And these are the benchmarks that I want you to measure yourself against, okay? Number 1 is workplace culture impacts productivity. So your culture impacts productivity. So think about the culture at home or corporate family. That's our focus today. And how is your culture impacting your productivity? Now, if this was a half day or a full seminar, we drill down into these, but we don't have time. Number 2, and this is a PDF we can provide you with, leadership has to be defined and applied. Who does that? Well, you shouldn't let experts do that. You should do that. That's why you study the word. For those of us that are on today that are believers, Christians, we study the word, and that's our ultimate authority. Preachers don't have it right. Seminarians don't have it right. They don't always have it right. A lot of you have been to seminary. A lot of you have been teachers. But we go to the word like the Bereans to find out, what the truth really is. 3, there's 7 principles here that make up corporate culture. 3, leaders have to work intentionally and internally. Intentionally and internally. It's focused. It's meaningful. Leaders, number 4, leaders work with multiple generations. So I'll just name them for you. The boomers, me, some of you, and then we have Xers, and then we have millennials, and now entering the workforce, 18, 19, 20 years old. Not calling them Gen Z because that's lazy academically. Let's just call them digital natives. They don't know anything but devices. Everything's connectivity. So we'll call them digital natives. They were born after 9/11, and they're coming into the workforce. So you got to speak 4 languages, and you all know this. So you got to be quadrilingue, not a real word, I made it up, but you got to speak 4 languages. Whole day trip there, but you got to be able to speak to all those generations in order to lead them correctly. Next, leadership has to be aligned, which is alignment we define as intellectual commitment, and then attuned emotional buy-in. Most initiatives we set forward to our corporate families fail the first, second, third time because we don't get buy-in. All kinds of research on that. You can Google it. 6, personal and professional lives have to be balanced. That simply means that you're better professionally if your life is in order personally. All of us have been through difficult times directly or indirectly. That takes our focus. So as a corporate family, we want to support each other. It's a team sport, and we want to make sure that personally and professionally, in order to be peak performers, we're balanced in those areas. And I'm not, I don't misunderstand state to state employment law, but you can fill in the blanks as is appropriate to wherever it applies. And then last one, you got to understand that leaders, it's developmental process. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't get a certificate. You can't be somebody's best friend and by osmosis or diffusion have it work. No, it's not how it works. So it's a developmental process, which takes us back to the intentionally, internally. You have to do things like this, and then you have to measure yourself against these benchmarks to find out, how do I measure up? Where can we improve? And that should absolutely be part of your 2021 business or strategic plan in our minds. So corporate family has 3 pillars. We've covered 2. One is emotional quotient, one is corporate culture. And we do believe that corporate culture has a bottom line impact. For those of you that are spreadsheet driven, for the CFOs, the accountants on the call, we absolutely can show a connection. Again, many decades of research. That's my favorite group to try to talk apologetically to, is does this stuff, is it measurable? Is this stuff really something that matters? And we've had some of our greatest stories around those individuals who were kind of math and quantitatively and qualitatively focused. So that's always fun too. The third is, there is a finite, it's not infinite, a finite number of specific leadership skills that make up peak performing leaders. We think there's about 30 to 35. We have courses on those. So I want to tell you, people will ask, how did you get these courses? Were these your favorites or no? After 30 years of doing this, we get asked the same 30, 35 questions over and over, and you quickly learn what to bring to the boardroom and what not to. So the courses that had the traction, the courses that people internationally, we have people taking courses truthfully in 3 or 4 Chinese languages in China. And these principles work because they're people-centric principles. They're not Anglo-Saxon, American, Western, which I kind of assumed, to be honest, till we got international. And then I learned, man, I guess these kind of reflect my faith-based, creator-focused clinical psychology that I was trained in. And it's kind of interesting. So hopefully this resonates with many of you. Now, if you want to take a peek, go to leadonuniversity.com. All our courses are listed there. There's 3 sections: personal leadership, high performance team leadership, and then executive leadership. The titles tell you what the course is focused on. It's not hard to tell. And you can actually look at the chapters. It's a video driven course. They're all 30 to 40 minutes, but you can look at the chapters to see if that would be helpful to you. The other thing I want to point you to that's free and available to you is our blogs. I think we have a couple hundred blogs over 10 or 12, 15 years, and they're substantive. How do we get the blogs? One of you asked us a question. We had to go research it. We came back with an answer, and we publish our blogs every week on Wednesdays, and they go up on our webpage, leadonuniversity.com. So if you want to just do a monthly meeting or you want to bring some content, you have my permission, I own it, to go cut and paste. It'd be nice if you mentioned the website, but you can have it and you can just kind of take it from there, and you're all capable of going in a direction that will help your corporate family improve by the content of one of those blogs. So that's free to you. If you want to follow us on LinkedIn, that's really the social platform that we use. We publish there every week as well. And, we have books, but I don't want to, for time's sake, get into that. There's other things I wanted to share with you today, but I got 2 minutes before the top of the hour, so I want to stay on time. I just want to remind you, corporate family, I want you to begin to think that it has a name. Your business professional family has a name, and it's called corporate family. And if you'll just focus next year, if you'll put into action improving your EQ, because it's 85 to 90% of the difference, and it's a game changer. You want to, by the way, we all know our clients, our culture, which is number 2, our clients know what our culture is. They know what our EQ is. They talk about us behind our backs. So let's embrace reality and let's figure out how to improve that in EQ and in culture. And then in areas where there's specific needs, I mentioned leading by communicating effectively. or leading through conflict resolution, or problem solving and execution. There's just a ton of courses that are specific leadership skills that if you have them, you're best in class. If you don't, let's just work towards them. And all the courses are focused on the problem, stats and facts. We always wear you out with that. So we're not just making this stuff up. And then when you say, okay, we get it, it's a thing, then we talk about the problem and solutions. So those are the three pillars that bolster and encourage corporate families. By the way, profit, nonprofit, private, public, across the board. These are skills that work with groups of people. I use these through the years with my son's football teams. I coached until high school, and they throw parents out. And then baseball, then they throw parents out, which is a good idea, by the way. And it works with teams of kids that don't even know what you're doing, but the principles work because we're people. And I'm, as you can probably tell, pretty energetic and pretty sold on these because I've been talking about them a long time. So it's the top of the hour. Tom, I tried to stay right on time. It's like football. I'm watching. I got no time. I didn't have a time. No, I was running. So I think we might have.
All right. All right. Can you hear me, Steve?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Because we had a little technological meltdown on my end after all the virtual lunch things we've done during this one today. My computer has gone on the fritz while you've been speaking, so I am now on my telephone. So I appreciate that.
Well, the mornings are now converging, so we'll leave it at that.
I know it. So we'll tell the story where you've been this morning in just a moment. But I have a question for you, and anybody else, if you have a question for Steve, you can type it in the Q&A bar on your screen, and he'll be able to see that in just a moment. But here's my question for you. I mean, you talked about the huge importance of EQ, and one of those things where some people are task focused to the expense of relationship, and some people are relationally oriented to the expense of getting anything done. But so what's an example of one thing a guy could do that would help him step up his EQ in this year ahead? Do you have any something that would slip in our pockets as we go out on that?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say that if us guys could be better at social awareness, what's going on around us. I can walk into a boardroom just because I'm a clinician and because I've done this a lot, and I can tell you immediately who the power players are, who signs the checks, who signs the contracts, who's just there because they're married to somebody. There's power in the room. You got to know social awareness. So that's one. I'll give you a bonus because you asked for one. Two is personal awareness. You got to look in the mirror. Our wives, our kids, our grandkids. It's, hey men, it really sucks when your grandkids, they're 4 and they look at you and you violated they take you seriously when you lay down the benchmarks. But the point is that social awareness, what's going on around me, and you want to be 90% improved. You want to be a peak performer. The research doesn't lie over 3 decades. Tell me, there's no other studies like that. So social and personal awareness, we could do better in those areas. We could change the world.
Wow, that's great. So even did something as simple of every time you walk into a room, to a meeting room or a group or whatever, just to personally greet everybody there, say hi, call them by name, look in their eyes a little bit. Those are helpful things.
So to your point, worked with a lot of huge general contractors. I can't tell you what it does to the morale of the human talent, their employees. When I get them to walk a job site for 5 minutes, it takes way more time to drive out and back. If I get the executives to take 5 minutes and just high five people, the labor, it completely changes the morale. Now, how much does that cost? Well, a little time, but you don't have a marketing plan. You don't have to, it's not an event expense. So your point where you can high five, connect. Now, I know we're not high fiving and connecting, so don't put me in the HR file. In a world we're going to return to, there is something to connecting with people. That's an example of how it just sticks out of my mind listening to you ask the question. So just connecting with your people top to bottom. You're idealized. You're the leader. You're the boss. So you can make your organization as flat as you want. At the end of the day, you go to jail first, right? So we're just big fans of connecting, not fraternizing, but just connecting with your people so that they know you care.
Wow. That's great. I mean, that is so easy. And what a return on investment by just slowing down enough to sort of relationally, verbally, visually acknowledge other people in the room with you, and let them know that they're not invisible and they're not just a means to an end in what you're up to, but that they have value in the organization.
It's family, right? It's family.
Yeah. I love that expression, the corporate family. I mean, because it does naturally kind of lend itself to thinking in terms of relational dynamics, and so we need every dose of that we can get. So thank you for that. It's great. I have another question that came in. Somebody has asked, how can I evaluate my current level of EQ? Any insights on that for right now?
Yeah, so to be honest, if you just Google that, you'll see the different metrics. I'll kind of take a clinical approach to that. I just want to get the bottom line. So there's some tools out there. I happen to be a fan of ours, the Developing Emotional Competency Questionnaire. It's about 100 questions, and it'll assess you. It'll assess your team. It'll assess your organization if you wanted to. But a lot of people use it, as this gentleman asked, just to find out their strengths, their weaknesses, and where they could improve, how we define each of these characteristics. There's actually 25 separate characteristics, adaptability, communication, that we define that are components to EQ, so you can elevate that sooner rather than later.
That's great. It looks like we've had another question that came in. It just has to do with the difficulty in communicating when people are wearing masks and mumble. Any insights or encouragements for us on that?
More than 6 feet. So a couple of my kids are in hospitals at 5 a.m. every day. Here's what now there's the CDC, NIH, nobody seems to know what the rules are. So that's just the truth. But at 6 feet for 15 minutes without a mask, you're probably okay. I'm not making any recommendations. I'm just telling you what I've been told. So I'm speaking literally to the question, this will pass. But if you put distance, if you're out, that was in a room, by the way, a closed room. If you're outside and you have more than 6 feet, then you're probably going to be safe. If you have concerns, wear the mask, wear the PPE gear, suit up, be hazmat, do what you need to do. But if you want to remove the mask, go outside, remove the mask. I know it's cold in the Northern Hemisphere, but remove the mask, stay at 6 feet. If you have a fever, don't do it. And you can start to talk, because by the way, it is prohibitive. You can hear me, but it would have been kind of weird for the last 40 minutes if I'd have been doing this. And this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing marriage, parenting. And it's just, well, not my house. We have a different ethic, but that's not the point. You can't take the mask off, but it is a barrier. And so the more you can interact with people, and body language is important, right? We all know that. Tom, when you were preaching back in the day, I mean, you can tell you can tell if they're into it or not. You can tell if they're hungry or, so you can't really tell when I'm covered with the mask. So.
Yeah, that's great. I like that idea. Just simply physically arranging your circumstance or your environment in such a way that might allow for the mask to not be there. Hey, I like that camo, by the way. Nice.
I just want to do a promo for tomorrow's in-person event. You stuck my picture right next. The only thing you could have done worse is maybe a Navy SEAL or Brad Pitt. But I mean, so I had to bring the camo mask today because we're in Texas today, right? I mean, I'm in Cali, so that's a deficit. When they hear it, California, a lot of them went, I don't know if I want to stay for this, but anyway.
That's funny. And if you don't know what he's talking about, tomorrow we do have an in-person event where Jim Van Steenhouse is our speaker, and his story is being attacked by a grizzly bear and living to tell. And in our Toolbox weekly email, there was a picture of Jim in camo on a mountaintop holding a bighorn sheep that he had taken.
It was bloody. It was great. And then there's me in an outdated picture 15 pounds ago. It was not a good look.
Well, next time we're putting you in the camo from the beginning. Yeah, that's great. That's good. So, Steve, I appreciate you being here. Would you just tell the guys what you've gone through this morning? Because it wasn't easy for you to be here. Steve's had to physically relocate this morning to be able to still be with us today.
Well, look, all of us have been through the same year, and we're rolling into another one. So personally, it's been very stressful for all of us, and then professionally. So, I'm doing this with Tom and all of you for the first time. I still have it in me to want to present well. Every gig or event is important. I'm passionate, and I want to share something that can encourage you and inspire you. And on Monday, our governor shut the state down again, our 5th or 6th stay-at-home order. They haven't worked at all, which is why they're the second largest death rate in the nation. But they thought it'd be a good idea to continue a policy that doesn't work, but I don't want to commentate. And then last night, we had a very rare Santa Ana wind this time of year come in, where we had what you're familiar with, hurricane force winds. And so the public utility, the electricity, San Diego Gas and Electric, PG&E in California, shut our electricity off. So they send us home so we can congregate together and spread a very contagious virus. And then they shut our electricity down. And so all of the studio that I usually do this in, it's all gone. So I had to grab my laptop, which you're, seeing me on now, and run to an office where we could hope that the power didn't go out in the middle. And so look, this just is another example that you can speak it, you can write it, you can do TV, you can do radio, but when you have to apply adapting, patience, cool, calm, collected, when you have to apply EQ, I'll tell you what, sometimes I fail bigger than anybody. So it's not easy doing leadership the way we're defining it in our short time today.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is for sure. Isn't it interesting that you're the one fleeing the power outages, and it's my computer that freezes up on a beautiful 65 or 70 degree sunny day here, and I'm the one who ended up with the techno problems. But I appreciate you persevering to be here today. Steve, you mentioned like a PDF. I can easily email that out to all the guys who've been in attendance here today. If you want to send something like that on to me, I'll send it out to them. Would it be good?
Absolutely. I'll get them to you this afternoon.
All right. And is it on there, or shall I include it in the email, your website and directory to all the resources that Lead On provides?
Yeah, leadonuniversity1word.com, and I'll provide it, and you can find a way to get it to people. We're not hard to find, but absolutely would love to hear. You can communicate with us directly or through Tom, but I just appreciate everybody listening. I know we're busy, and it is one crazy, chaotic time. So thoughts and prayers are with everybody and my new friends here at Toolbox Ministries.
Yeah, great. Well, we look forward to having you back with us another time in some other way. So again, if you need additional information from or about Steve, you'll be able to get that on his website. And I will send out an email to you guys yet this afternoon with a PDF that Steve's mentioned on these foundational things, so that you can, the things that you sort of just verbally took in here in the last half an hour or so, you can go back and take a look at and figure out where you need to drill down in time to come. That's great. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being here. And men, thank you again for being here today. Again, remember our opportunities coming up in January, our Inquire group for people who are beginning to scratch their head and wonder if these things about God and faith and the Bible and Jesus are true. We'd love to have you get your questions answered, or at least engage the conversation. For those who are just wanting to bite down in a stronger way towards a life of impact, we have M2819 in our partnership with Dwight Edwards coming up in the new year as well. And our next in-person events in January are with Larry O'Donnell. And so I hope to see you guys down the road in those things. As I mentioned, if I can do anything for you, you can reach me through our weekly emails. You'll see my contact information at the bottom. Let me know what I can do for you to help you out in any kind of way. I'd be really pleased to do so.